My name is Eric Avigdor. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Votiro. And with me, we have a great colleague from Zscaler, Amit Jain. You want to share a bit about your
Hello,
background?
hello everyone. I'm based out of sunny California, and in my role as VP Product Management at Zscaler, I continuously think about how to balance security and as well as enable productivity, which is what Eric and I gonna touch about with this beautiful partnership that we have embarked upon to create an impactful experience for all of you.
Thanks, Amit. And I think, it's well said that balance between security and productivity and ease of use, it's a pain point we're all familiar with. And that's why this partnership is going to hopefully benefit many of you because both companies are extremely focused on both aspects. So we're going to talk about something pretty interesting, which is how browser isolation, security service edge, and content disarm and reconstruction and data detection and response all meet together in one place to provide some pretty impressive value. Let's get going. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit first about the malware problem. Yep, malware is a problem, but we need to better understand it in order to deal with it, and even better understand it in order to deal with it efficiently. There's a lot of things we could be doing which are not the best way to deal with malware. We'll be providing a bit of insight into how that can be dealt with extremely efficiently with no user holdback. And at the same time, we'll be looking at what role Zscaler and what role Votiro play in that space and how we can really create a situation which brings a whole lot of value in preventing risk and malware, with managing risk and keeping private data safe. Hopefully, we'll show you a demo somewhere towards the end. If there are any questions, we have Michael Bowen, our senior sales engineer here in the US. He's manning the chat. So if you have any questions, type in the chat and we'll answer them. And we'll save some time at the end for more Q&A as needed. Let's start with the basics. So we all know that malware is dangerous. But what I think sometimes people don't fully appreciate is the fact that malware has a whole lot of easy ways into an enterprise. It is extremely easy for me, as someone who wants to maliciously deploy malware in any organization. It is extremely easy to do that. And the reason that it truly is that easy is that nowadays, with modern technologies and SaaS applications and collaboration tools, the entry points are massive. There's a very large number of entry points, and many of them are not perfect in securing that entry point from malicious content entering. Now, you bundle that with the fact, and this interesting statistic is out there, that close to 70%, 69% of employees will bypass security protocols to improve productivity. So think about what this means. I'm a user, I'm expecting to receive my loan application because I work at a credit union or a bank. Or maybe I'm an HR person and I need to receive a resume and send that resume to someone. Or maybe there is a financial spreadsheet and I need that file, I need it to do my daily job. If I can't receive it because it's held back, I can't do my job. So users are extremely interesting creatures, and usually would find interesting ways to bypass security protocols and tools. And by doing that, they also circumvent the security posture of a company. I want to take one interesting example. For those of you who have been tracking the Darkgate malware, there was a massive campaign last year, August 2023, end of summer. Basically, Darkgate is a pretty sophisticated piece of malware that is multimodal. It can do many different things. It can harvest credentials. It can exfiltrate data. It can escalate privilege within the organization once it is deployed. It can do a whole lot of things. However, you still need to find a way to deploy that malware within the organization. So how could you do that? The traditional way was I send an email. I'll send you a phishing email. It will seem innocent. You click on a link and the file's downloaded and the hacker is good to go. How? Maybe that phishing email has a link inside which calls a download of that specific piece of malware. That malware is downloaded as kind of a boot loader, and then that piece of malware downloads additional capabilities that are then slowly deployed. They move laterally, they can gain privileged access, and they exfiltrate data, or even potentially encrypt that data, and then you're basically in a ransomware situation. So what is different about this situation? If in the past that attack would mainly come in through email, hackers are finding it extremely easy to use other tools to gain access and to deploy malware. The best example is your Teams collaboration tools, Microsoft Teams. Why? When I receive an email so yes, me, Eric, I've been in cybersecurity for many years. When I receive an email, I'm extremely cautious. However, most users are not. And many users will mistakenly click on, out of negligence, click on a link, download the malware is deployed, and we're all in trouble. However, many users have been trained throughout the years through a lot of security education to be careful with email. So many users are somewhat suspecting when they see an email that they don't know. Teams is a different story. We have been indoctrinated. We have got used to trusting collaboration tools like Teams and Slack and others. When an external message comes in over Teams, not every user will even associate that with an external message like an email, and will probably more likely click on that link, trusting that environment, which is why Darkgate was so successful, especially in that type of environment. Just another quick example that the Ukraine Cyber Emergency Response Team alerted on back in September 2023 is the increased use of SaaS applications. Many SaaS applications, modern SaaS applications being used today, Salesforce, ServiceNow, you name it. Any SaaS application being used in an environment, maybe an HR application, will be a great point where an external third-party entity can deploy malware into that environment, where that will then be consumed by enterprise employees. So I think we've well defined the problem, why malware is, how malware can be injected into a company through files. But the real problem, when you look at this solar system view of how content works within an organization, what you quickly realize is that files not only exist everywhere, they come in through so many different entry points. Email is one, collaboration tool is another one. Then you have your cloud storage and your file sharing environments like SharePoint, Box, OneDrive, File Cloud, different environments where files are brought into the environment and are then shared internally and externally. Data management platforms. What about that third-party facing portal that I'm sure every one of you has? A website for partners or customers or suppliers. What about the browser, right? Where we browse on our daily basis on personal websites and SaaS applications. All of these areas are areas where malware can find its way into an organization and be ingested and then move laterally. The reason for this webinar is that lately, a new emerging use case is coming to the surface for us as a company. And that is the fact that many organizations have been deploying security service edge, SSE, SASE environments with CASP capabilities and remote browser isolation capabilities, which is really where the mutual Zscaler and Votiro story comes to life. So I'd like to hand this over back to you, Amit, to tell us a little bit about what Zscaler does and walk us through it.
Makes sense. No, thanks, Eric. So at Zscaler, we understand that securing today's cloud and mobile-first enterprise requires a fundamentally different approach to zero trust. So now ZIA, which is Zscaler Internet Access, and it's part of our Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange. And this is the world's most widely deployed security services edge platform. which is built on a decade of secure web gateway leadership. And this platform, is built on two fundamental pillars on protecting thousands of customers from cyber attacks and also preventing any data loss by securely connecting users, devices, and applications across any location. And we layer it on with a analytics layer so that we can get the job done for you and provide insights, SecOps, threat hunting into that malware problem that Eric highlighted at the beginning of it to make it very, very streamlined for you as to where the threat is happening into your network or where the threat will happen into your network because of some misconfiguration or some not not having the right integration with the right tooling. So we have something called a breach predictor that will tell you how soon those threats will likely infiltrate into your network. So now the important thing is that, as Eric mentioned, that files are becoming the lifeline of most of these organizations. So natively integrated into our zero trust exchange platform is AI powered sandbox, which can do a comprehensive analysis and protect your organizations from any file borne threats coming from the web destinations or your customer facing portals. However, in a bid to improve productivity, access to the content or those files may still be required, even though those files may be infected or may have those zero-day threats. So the key question becomes, can you boost productivity without incurring the security risk inherent in those file-borne threats? Next slide. So integral to the zero trust exchange is the cloud browser isolation. And the context is that majority of your employees or your workforce who are accessing internet over managed endpoints through a browser, they are likely to bring in malware into your network because as they are accessing web destinations, web emails, or downloading those files, those threats can creep into your network. And the legacy SWIG binary approach of either allowing the content, it can compromise security, or overblocking can hurt productivity. So this is why at Zscaler, we have this technology of cloud browser isolation, which is natively integrated into the exchange. And think of it as a managed browser running in the cloud, detonating the web content with any associated zero-day threats being isolated in that air-gapped environment, while at the same time enforcing clipboard access, upload, download restrictions, or firing up that web page in a read-only construct, all while streaming safe, turbo-pixelated content back to the end user browser so that you enable productivity while protecting any threats coming into the network. Next slide. So extending this concept of web isolation, we also have files isolation built into this framework. So for example, if your users are going to pdfshare.net or any other risky or suspicious things, and they might want to go there for a genuine task because your end customers or your partners may have uploaded a file which you need to download into your network, and those files may contain some threads, but all you wanted is the access to the content. So built into the browser isolation is a document processing technology which will convert those productive-related files into a view-only PDF constructs that you can watch within the confines of that browser. Or taking it even further, you can download it as a converted PDF file. But many a times, what we have heard from the customers is that I do want the same file format. I do want to keep all the file functionality intact. And so this is where this integration creates 1 + 1 = 3 value because of Votiro's strong innovation in the CDR space. So Eric, do you want to touch upon the different levels and how Votiro brings this innovation to this market?
Yeah, I think that's a great segue because this is, you mentioned something extremely important, Amit, and this is something that, when we tend to think about security as security professionals, we think about how to keep stuff safe. But what we really want to do is we want to provide that with true productivity. An example is, if I'm receiving an email or if I'm downloading a file, what I really want to do is I want to receive the file so I can do my job. I don't want that file to be blocked by a platform or held back. So I need to beg IT to release it, right? I need to go out and I ask IT to release it. So what I really want to do is I want to receive my content so I can do my daily job. And for that, this is a new a technology that's been around. It's not new. It's been around for 12 years, over 12 years. It is called Content Disarm and Reconstruction. And throughout the past 12 to 13 years, it's been evolving in several different ways to provide a more easy, simplified user experience. CDR level 1, which is what the market kind of started with Content Disarm and Reconstruction, takes a file and basically flattens it out. It converts it into a PDF. So if you have a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or a PowerPoint, you create a PDF, you send it over, and yes, it is safe, but it's not very usable. If you had macros or active content that you need within that file, those would not be functional. The second level of CDR, which came out a few years later, was a CDR variant which said, if it's a Word document, let's keep it a Word document. Or if it's an Excel spreadsheet, let's keep it as an Excel spreadsheet, but let's deactivate all of the active content. Let's deactivate all of the macros and all of the other links and potentially needed active content that make the file usable. If you're a finance person, you need macros in your spreadsheet. Same in PowerPoints, same in Word documents. Some of that active content is necessary for the file to be functional. So this was a step forward, but it wasn't quite it. And I think many people that have experimented with CDR, with Content Disarm and Reconstruction 10 years ago and 7 or 8 years ago, may have experienced some of these limitations, which is why we've innovated and we came forward years ago with what Votiro coined CDR level 3. Content Disarm and Reconstruction, which truly reconstructs the file into its original format with all of the active content available, which means that the file is fully functional, fully intact. Which means that you, the user, or your users, will be able to receive a file which is an exact same copy of the previous, of the original file. It is fully functional, and it is as close as possible to 100% safe. In cybersecurity, we never say 100%, but it truly is as close as possible to 100% safe, not only from known malware, also from unknown zero-day attacks. So how do we do the magic? Let's talk about the secret sauce, how we make the sausage. Content disarm and reconstruction requires a deep understanding of the file format. And at Votiro, what we really excel at, we are file experts. We take files, we deconstruct them, nearly 200 file types. If I'd ask you to name not 200, but 50 file types, I'm pretty sure that folks would be struggling. So we do support a massive amount of file types, pretty much anything you could find on that is in commercial use. And every single one of them is deconstructed and dissected into its different elements, the different objects that compose that file. So if you think about a Microsoft Office document, it is actually a collection of many different things, XMLs and binaries and different configurations within the file, where every single one of them could potentially be a vehicle for malicious code and malicious content to come into your network and onto your endpoints. So the first thing we do is we dissect the file. We then run a lot of different engines. Some of them are detection-based, some are AI and machine learning-based that we've been training for many years in order to really look at every single aspect within a file. Find executables in binary and run a scan on them to detect if they're known to be bad. We actually analyze macros with machine learning, which has been trained on millions over millions of malicious macros, so we can actually extract the malicious macro and carry over a macro which is benign and that you actually need. links will be analyzed. Links and URLs will be analyzed to identify malicious domains. Every single aspect of that document will be inspected and then will be reconstructed into the original file format, including protections against image-based attacks, which are known as steganography. Many different attacks can be infiltrated through and actually leverage images in order to really do two interesting things. One is to inject malware through an image into an organization, and also to exfiltrate private data through an image outside of an organization. And the technology tackles both. This integration tackles both problems, the problem of malware from coming in and the problem of private data being exfiltrated. With that said, I would like to maybe summarize a little bit on what the benefits of using CDR are compared to, for example, just using your antivirus. If you're using an antivirus-based tool, you will only, which what I call a detection-based tool. It detects known signatures, which means you will detect only what you know is malicious, only what antivirus engines have already found to be malicious. What you will not detect are the things that we don't know yet are malicious, zero-day attacks. For content disarm and reconstruction, we apply zero trust principles, which means we don't trust any file, we don't trust any object. We will sanitize every one of them so you receive your content safely. Second point is that we do that in real time. As an open API-based service, there's no need to hold back files and block them. The users will receive them in sub-second. The average business document will take less than 1 second, which means from a user perspective, they don't even know this is happening. It is in the user flow. They receive their email attachment. They receive their download through the browser, through a Zscaler environment. And I'll show you that in a moment, and the file is safe. And because we use AI and machine learning, what this protects you is against all of those new variants which are more sophisticated, which the detection engines will not find. Now, the beauty of this whole story is that it allows, instead of having your users focus on privacy, you will see many vendors out there and many technologies out there telling you that you need to first detect the malware before it comes in, then you need to educate your users on what not to do, and then you will need to clean up the mess once it lands. Content disarm and reconstruction comes into play before that malware lands on your endpoint. So with this great integration between Zscaler and Votiro, we can prevent that malware from coming in the first place, which means you don't need to detect it. Well, it's always a good idea to educate users, but even if one of the users does not follow the rules and policies, you will still be protected. And last but not least, you will not need to clean up the enormous amount of mess that is created by hundreds and sometimes thousands of tickets every day of malware being detected on endpoints. I mean, how does this work?
No, great points, Eric. You hit the nail on the head. This is the beauty of this integration. And so to go a little bit deeper into how this integration works, so a user, be it on their cell phones or tablets or laptops, they open their browser. They want to browse the websites which might be hosting the file content. Either they could be genuine sites or suspicious sites, but there is a valid reason for the user to go to those sites and download those content. So when the user is actually firing up that content in their browser, we would seamlessly connect it to the Zero Trust Exchange and fire up that content and detonate that content in the cloud browser isolation. So you are protected from any zero-day threats on the web pages, and the natively integrated capabilities will detect that this file is malicious. But as Eric said, we want to enable productivity. So through a API call, when the file is in the Zero Trust Exchange and within the confines of that cloud browser isolation, either you have an option to download the level 1 CDR, the flattened PDF file. If that's the use case, you're good to go. Or if you want the original file format to keep intact the macros, the full file functionality. You have an option to say, I want the same original file format, at which point in time, we make an API call to the Votiro, it sends us the sanitized file. Obviously, that will happen a priori before you even click it, but that will be all made up and prepared and ready so that when you click on that button, the Votiro's CDR engine would have already sanitized the file, and that would allow you to download that original file format, that docx file, that XLS file, so that you can now build upon that file to get that productivity rolling out. And similarly, Eric talked about steganography, so that can happen on both the paths while removing the malware from any of the files being downloaded. Or recently, steganography attacks are also used to exfiltrate the data by hiding sensitive content in image files. So even when a user or a malware on that machine may try to upload such a file through their browser, it will be getting intercepted in the cloud browser isolation. Again, through an API call with the Votiro, we will take away that sensitive information so that when the user is trying to upload it to your applications or any other file shared, those copies of the files are sanitized and pristine and without any sensitive content from your organization. So again, just to summarize, with this integration, it's a very, very seamless thing. You don't even notice this integration is happening because it's all API integrated. As a user, you will get two options: level 1 CDR to download a flattened PDF file, or a level 3 CDR, which is using the innovation that Votiro brings to the table for this integration. Eric, do you want to talk about this demo?
Yeah, so I think it's important to call out, sometimes we feel like we have reasonable protection for malware coming in, right? Because maybe we have a few systems in place. I would urge, folks to, when you track the news, the big breaches, read about how they actually occur, right? Because the way that most large breaches start is actually with a zero-day attack, not with something that would be detected by a detection engine, which is why this technology is so important. I'm going to show you now the user experience of a user downloading, trying to download a file through the Zscaler ZIA environment, and what happens behind the scenes when that happens. So we'll talk about the user end of the user experience, and then we'll talk about the IT analyst, IT admin side of what can be done with that information. So what we're seeing here, I'll just click play. You're seeing a user that is browsing on their SharePoint location and trying to download a file. So they click download, and Zscaler grabs that activity and says, okay, we'll send that to Votiro. And now that Votiro has sanitized the file, if you'd like to download it, go into your protected storage secured by Zscaler, and you can from there download the sanitized version of the file. So what you just saw here happen in those 12 seconds was all of that magic that Zscaler and Votiro can do together. Zscaler grabs download, pushes that file to Votiro. Votiro analyzes the file, disarms the file, delivers it back to Zscaler, which delivers it to the user. From an end user perspective, all they had to do is click download, and in their normal standard user flow, download that file from that secured storage. So from a user perspective, there's no additional education needed. It is a very, very simple process, and honestly allows that user the full confidence in their admins that this file is intact and is safe to be used. Now, if we click quickly forwards, there you go. Here's the other side of this coin. These files, as they move through Zscaler and Votiro, as we disarm them and as we crack open the file and look at everything inside, and we carry over the content, which is what the user needs, we also leave behind all of those objects that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And that is where the interesting story lies, because what we find there in many cases are an enormous amount of suspicious objects which are either mistakenly there or intentionally there, and they are the element that actually always starts the breach. Now, as an admin, when you jump into the Votiro platform, and I'm just showing here one screen, but there are threat analytics dashboard and privacy analytics dashboard, and from there you can dive into every one of these cases in order to learn what exactly was that attack, how was that attack conducted, which element was used in order to conduct the attack, which can give you, from a threat hunting and from a threat analysis perspective, a much better understanding of how that 0-day is working within your environment. What does that do? We all know that when 0-day is deployed, it takes anywhere between 2 weeks to 6 months to even realize that you've been breached. That shortens that time basically to a single day, or potentially even to a single minute. We sanitize the file, which means we make it safe, which means you are safe. 0-day won't have an impact on you. But at that same time, you will have that information for threat analytics and for threat hunting perspectives, where you will be able to find how you're being attacked, and you'll now be able to take action in order to prevent that attack from even attempting to recur. So once again, content disarm will keep you safe. In addition to that, it will also give you the analytics to be more efficient overall as a security organization, and the users will be able to do their job without us security people annoying them and keeping them not productive. So quickly summarizing on the benefits of this great partnership. Amit, do you want to start?
Sure. No, I think this is a great, Eric. I think in all partnerships, you have to see like how the two are adding up to provide the utmost value. And together with the Zscalers, SSE platforms and the Votiro's DDR platform, we are providing a fundamentally unique architecture, that not only provides you the safe browsing as you are browsing different internet destinations or file shares, but this architecture truly enables you to detect the true type of the files and perform the actions accordingly. For example, the file structure would be analyzed for any hidden file objects. The file content would be checked for any risk URLs, any active content, any macros will be analyzed and ruled out based on this AI and machine learning algorithm. Any metadata, can be discarded or preserved based on the policy or security or audit requirements. And more importantly, as the files are becoming more complex in terms of the archives or any other embedded objects within those documents, those would be analyzed recursively within this architecture to protect you from all sorts of file-borne threats. And one of the other things that I mentioned earlier was also the data exfiltration part of it. So together this architecture also ensures that not any sensitive content that's hidden within those documents cannot be exfiltrated, because the architecture will try to take away such kind of content.
And before we
Over to
move
you,
on
Eric.
to Q&A, there's one really interesting point that I keep, every time we talk about this with customers and prospects, it always kind of surprises folks. If I would ask you, what is the easiest way to circumvent pretty much any security control you have? If I would want to either send in malware or exfiltrate private data, what would be the easiest way to do that, circumventing most security controls? Well, the easiest way would be to archive, to maybe zip a bunch of files and password protect them. The reason is that once you password protect that archive, it is encrypted, and as such, nothing can really look into it. Malware detection tools, DLP capabilities, nothing can look into that file unless it is somehow decrypted. So organizations really have two options. Either they completely block password protected encrypted files, which is not a great idea because in many cases those are needed, or they allow them through, which is what most companies do. Most organizations will allow those through, which really means that is a gaping open door that is an easy entry point for malware. Many attacks lately have started exactly that way. You receive a phishing email or a Teams message with a password protected zip file, and then out of bound, the hacker will send you the user the password. The user uses the password to decrypt the file, and the malware explodes. We actually solved that problem. We actually have a way to solve that problem. As the user is downloading that file, which is the original password protected file, Votiro will come in, replace that file with a PDF, which asks the user to type in the password. As the user types in the password, within Votiro, we will crack open that file, sanitize it, make it safe, repackage it with the original password, and deliver it to the user through the Zscaler integration, which means even in that situation, we will keep you safe. So,
Absolutely.
I hope this was enjoyable and fun. We'll open up for questions. Let's see if we have any questions from the crowd. Feel free to use the chat. Let me see what we have here.
I think Sarah had an interesting question that she understood like the difference between the sandbox and the Votiro thing. She wanted to really understand how are we making sure that the sanitized file is without any malware.
Okay. So very interesting question. So let's talk about the pros and cons of different technologies. Antivirus mainly is a tool that detects known signatures on files. Sandboxes are tools that detect known malicious behaviors. I'm generalizing a little bit, I'm oversimplifying, but the rule of thumb is that detection tools need to detect either a known signature or a known behavior. Content disarm and reconstruction, which is what Votiro does, doesn't need to detect anything. We don't need to detect that malicious component. What we do is actually something called positive selection. We, instead of detecting the known bad, we detect the known good, which means we search for the good components within a file, which are the text and media and images and macros and links. Everything we know is good content that should be used. And then we run analysis on the good content, copying over only the good content onto a new template, which means everything that is left behind shouldn't have been there in the first place. That is where the zero-day attacks lie. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and I think I will take up the second part of Sarah's question. So yes, you can use the Zscaler Client Connector app installed on the machine to seamlessly send your traffic to the Zscaler cloud. And should the policies be configured to redirect into the cloud browser isolation, that redirect will happen seamlessly, and it will start streaming pixels back to your browser, and with all the file content being streamed to that thing without any special configuration needed at your end. And that's the beauty of this integration.
I see a question about efficacy. How is efficacy measured in CDR? And the answer is actually interesting. Efficacy is measured very, very, very differently compared to detection tools. What happens in CDR is that when you completely disarm a file and deliver the resulting disarmed file, what usually happens is that in those very, very rare cases, there are situations where CDR has disarmed an object which it shouldn't have disarmed. So it's actually not that it missed a malicious component, it's actually the opposite. Something that was actually benign was unintentionally removed. That is an extremely rare occasion nowadays with the technology being so advanced. I can tell you that as a company that transacts on billions of files every year, we see less than a handful of cases across, the many customers using content disarm and reconstruction. So again, efficacy is slightly different. It's more about mistakenly detecting something to be malicious where it's actually not, and not the other way around. How confident are you that no malware will be transferred and it could clean everything? So I'll say this again, as I've been in the cybersecurity space for too long to say 100%, I will never say that. But I will say that in in the 12 years that Votiro exists, there has never been a case where malware has evaded content disarm and reconstruction. And it's not only because we do our job well, it's because the physics of and the mechanics of the technology are a very different approach for detecting malware. You don't need to detect malware. You need to remove what shouldn't be there in the first place, and you'll be safe. Let's see. Other
I think there's one
questions?
question on the Zscaler's route to market. Do you use distribution as well as reseller, MSP, ISP partners in the country? So the answer is all of the above. And in fact, if you want to use the Zscaler and the Votiro integration, right now it's meet in the channel. Like you would have to procure Votiro licenses separately as well as Zscaler licenses separately to be able to make this integration work.
So another question that came up was, and I see Sarah here asking, how does AI and machine learning come into play? That's a great question because it's a space I love. It's actually extremely interesting. When you try to detect known malware, there are known behaviors. Let's say something is writing to the disk, right? Or if you find a known signature, okay, it's a binary yes, no. Do I know the signature? Yes, this is bad. I'll block the file. However, macros, as an example, are actions that could potentially be malicious or not. And you could use, for example, what Votiro does is we use tens of different characteristics of how the macro is being composed. And we analyze all of those with machine learning that has been trained on millions of macros to detect what architectures and what structures are known to be malicious. So it's not even the type of call that the macro does or the type of action the macro does. It is many different aspects of how the macro has been designed that helps us find whether that macro is malicious or not. And as you can imagine, there are 1 or 2 or 3 occasions a year where our customers come back to us and say, hey, this macro was actually benign, it was not malicious. No problem. We take that, we feed that back into the machine learning engine, and it retrains itself. So it's a much more sophisticated of dealing with those objects. I saw another question probably for you, Amit, on you're talking about browser isolation in terms of endpoint configuration. Can we still use ZCC client app installed? Or we could have, or we would have to configure access via the browsers.
Yeah, no, as I mentioned earlier, so the CCC client application is the thing that you need to install at the endpoint to route the traffic to the Zscaler cloud, at which point in time it will seamlessly redirect into the cloud browser application depending on the policies that you would have configured in the Swig, or depending on the risk of the destination based on the AI and ML engine that we will determine the risk of it. So once you are in that browser isolation, and you're trying to access the file, that's how we will build that integration into the Votiro thing to happen.
I'll go quickly through. I see we're coming up on time. I'll go quickly through a couple of last questions. So there's a question on the Votiro console. Do we need a Votiro subscription to view the report? So yes, you'd need a Votiro subscription to view all of the reports and analytics. And what is nice is that actually the Votiro subscription will allow you to go beyond only the web environment. It would also allow you to do the same for email or for Teams or for your OneDrive and SharePoint environments, maybe for your web-facing portals where you may have, a third-party facing customer portal where documents come in from, and you want to that actually from a third-party risk management perspective is a critical entry point. So yes, there's another question about if any client needs to be deployed on the endpoint. So no, from a Votiro perspective, the solution is a cloud-based solution, an API-based offering, which integrates in the backend with all of these applications and services like Zscaler. There is no need to deploy any client on the endpoint.
So Erica, so just to clarify, so from Votiro perspective, obviously the functionality is cloud-based, but from an overall integration perspective, you do need a Zscaler client connector as per the question earlier. So you do need that client on the endpoint to be able to redirect into the Zscaler cloud and then into the Votiro. So that's
Yes,
what it is.
yeah. So answering from, if you have currently Zscaler and you'd like to add Votiro onto it, you would not need an additional client.
Makes
But yeah.
sense.
Route to market, we answered that. I don't think we have, let's see. Does Votiro support all file types? So the answer is we support 200 file types, which is more than I've ever knew actually existed. Very rarely we find an extremely unique file type, for a specific country, and then we add that into our support. But yes, the answer is we will be able to support any file type that you might be using. Does the Votiro product extend the protection into attachments downloaded through email? Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. So Votiro can tackle files everywhere. On-premise, in the cloud, in your browser, in SaaS applications, in email, in Teams or Slack or OneDrive or SharePoint or Box or Dropbox or anywhere where files in your data management platforms, anywhere where you find files, we will be able to sanitize them.
Yeah. So I think it's like the message is like go bonkers, access any file without any without any fear of a security risk.
Exactly. I think we're up on time, and I'm seeing a lot of comments coming in. I want to thank you all, and thanks, Amit, for first being a great partner, and second for sharing this webinar and your excitement about the integration. And this is very very good. And if there are any questions from the audience, email us and we'll be happy to set up sessions. There's a CTA right there on the screen with an email, info@votiro.com. You can email us. We'll be happy to come back and help you. Any closing notes, Amit, on your end?
No, I think as I said earlier, it's both of these partners like came together to make sure that you get the productivity that you deserve without incurring any risk in this file-borne threats. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your Thursday.
Thank you. Bye.